Hello, everybody. It's Rashad here. Just wanted to make this brief video. If you can, please hit the subscribe button, the like button. It'll be greatly appreciated. My fellow Christians, we have to have a talk. So there's so much going on right now. Yesterday, I made a brief video regarding President Trump's um, video that he made regarding Gaza. But I was reminded this morning, in my prayer time, about a phrase that one of my friends had said about 2 years ago. And he said, "We are having an open book test." And what he was talking about it in the context of, at that time, of COVID, when the vaccines were coming out and they were trying to force the vaccines on people and forcing people to get the vaccine against their will. It was an experimental drug, and it was pretty obvious that we were being scammed because they were telling us the vaccine was safe and effective. I mean, I live in Connecticut, and I remember the commercials were ad nauseum, safe and effective, safe and effective, safe and effective. And come to find out, the vaccine was not safe, and it certainly wasn't effective because you could still get COVID and you could still transmit to other people. And so you realize that we were being tested. Um, and perhaps I would dare say the majority of us failed that test in discerning what was going on. But that was one of the tests. Another test I want to talk about today was going way back 12 years ago. 12 years ago, it will be 12 years this year, I think it is. And that's when we had the Obergefell Hodges decision, which was concerning gay marriage. And during that test, it was something that I thought, by and large, that most believing, Orthodox, Bible believing Christians would pass. Many failed. I remember when that happened, when that decision came down, and the 5-4 decision, I think it was 5-4 decision that came down on 4-3. Can't remember, but anyway, when it was in favor for gay marriage, I remember seeing Christians happy. They were happy that gay marriage was being affirmed or approved. And I couldn't believe it. And this was Christians actually rejoicing. I remember Barack Obama putting the rainbow flag or draping the rainbow flag, or the White House being draped in the rainbow flag. And I remember that. And I remember people having like glee over this. They were Christians, and I couldn't believe it. I was so incensed by that. I was more incensed at believers being okay with the decision than the actual decision itself. Because it's one thing to have a decision for something that's totally contrary to scripture, but it's another thing to see professing Christians going along with it like it's not a big deal. I would dare say we failed that test. And even to this very day, when it comes to Barack Obama, I remember back at that time, I thought that people would say, I can no longer support this man and his agenda because it goes against my Christian values. And that did not happen. People still was supporting Barack Obama, even though he was absolutely undermining the very values that we hold deeply. And I said, this is absolutely insane. We failed that test. Many Christians failed that test and are still failing that test. But then you fast forward to today. We have another open book test with President Donald Trump. I voted for President Trump 2016, 2020, and 2024. And I can tell you, after After watching that video I saw last night, I was absolutely appalled at what I saw. It was absolutely ridiculous, absolutely insane. And I still am like taken back. But the one thing that I realized in that whole matter, the video was one thing. That was obviously a significant part of the reason why I was frustrated. But the other part was I was waiting to see like all these Christian YouTubers, commentators that have major platforms actually say something about the video. The video came out 2 or 3 days ago, and these guys aren't saying anything. The individuals that support Trump, that claim to be Christian, claim to be conservative Christian, and they're not saying a word. And that to me is more telling, perhaps more than the video itself. And the reason why, to me, it's more telling than the video itself is because I know that if it was Barack Obama, if it was Hillary Clinton, if it was Joe Biden, if it was Kamala Harris, they would be all over it. You would have tons and tons of commentary about the debauchery, the blasphemy, just the insanity of the video, the idolatry of that video that President Trump released. And you don't see anything from these guys. That made me even more frustrated because now you start asking the question, where is the real allegiance? Is it with Donald Trump or is it with the Lord Jesus Christ? Because that video was so blasphemous, the self-deification, the debauchery, and then it's not just the video, it's the actual idea of taking over the Gaza Strip. I want to stay here with this a little bit and touch on some key things that President Trump is talking about, just to have some context. Again, this is an open book test. It's an open book test on the fact that President Trump, in that video, pretty much is self-deifying himself. It's self-worship, is idolatry, it's self-deification, reflects King Nebuchadnezzar in the book of Daniel, it reflects the golden calf, etc. You go on and on. It's an open book test. You can read about that and say, oh yeah, we've been here before. The arrogance, the pride. It's pretty obvious this is something that is really undermining what we believe as believers. And so what's happening is people will try to reason, right? Like, well, it's not really that bad, or, it's what we're trying to find a way to justify this type of behavior or just ignore it at all. And frankly, I just think you can't do that. The same way you wouldn't do that for someone that's a Democrat or someone that's on the left that, you're opposed to. You can't do that for Donald Trump. The dude is in massive error. And that's just a fact. That's an objective fact if you're a believer. But when you go beyond just a video, the idea is absolutely insane. Or do we fully understand what he's proposing? Like, we can talk about this till the cows come home, but the American people, those who voted for Donald Trump, did not vote for him to take over the Gaza Strip, especially when that war has nothing to do with us. We did not vote for him to do that at all. So that's one idea or one aspect of it. The other aspect of it, it's literally ethnic cleansing. You're talking about removing a people out of their land permanently, and then you coming in and rebuilding. This is gentrification on a scale that we would never have seen before ever in our lives. And it's like, when people are like this, And we're turning a blind eye. Like, that's not what this project is about. Donald Trump is a real estate investor, and that's what he sees. Meanwhile, the people, regardless of how you fall on the Israel-Palestinian issue, they're literally going to be taken out of their land, not permitted to return, as he said. So, and let me just stay there with this for a little bit, because I think we have to see through the propaganda, and I can speak to this to a certain degree because I served in Iraq. We get fed a lot of propaganda that we don't even recognize it. Like, when it comes to the Palestinian conflict, yes, Hamas is a very wicked group of people. There's no question about that. They're terrorists. However, we have to understand that every Palestinian is not Hamas. Now, indeed, many of them may very well support them, but then there's also Palestinian Christians. And I think what happens is we can paint these things with a very broad brush to to justify our feelings for what's happening there. Oh yeah, they need to go and wipe them out, blah blah blah. But there's innocent people being killed too. And I'm thinking about this, and there's no easy answer. I can share some of my ideas, but I'm not going to get. I don't want to get too distracted from the thesis of this video. But I think overall, I think you cannot, as a foreign country, go into this conflict and say we're going to take over that land and rebuild it like the Las Vegas of the Middle East. That is, it's disrespectful. It's flat out evil. That's the greater idea that we're missing. The video is blasphemous without a question, but the idea itself is just evil. It's just wrong. And I know for sure, if this was someone on the left proposing it, most people on the right would think the person's insane, they're insane. So that's one part of it. Again, back to my thesis. It's an open book test. We have the answers to the test. We know that the video is blasphemous. The idea is insane. It's an open book test. We all know this. Like, we all, especially as, remove the bias for a second. Remove the bias of Donald Trump if you're a conservative Christian or conservative. Remove that bias for a moment and just think, if this was somebody else, how would you approach it? What would you think? Just do that for a second. Okay, that's one thing. Second thing is another test. So President Trump is actually talking about making Canada the 51st state. Now, I thought about this yesterday morning and I said, this is another insane idea, because he's talking about this in the context of primarily economic warfare. In other words, from what I've heard him say is we're subsidizing Canada, providing them protection and this, that, and the third, and da-da-da-da-da. And he's trying to sell it that if Canada becomes a part of our nation, it'll be better for them. And he's missing the fundamental idea, the fundamental reality. Like, Canada is a sovereign nation. What's the difference between Donald Trump proposing to make Canada the 51st state and then Vladimir Putin invading Ukraine? What's the difference? The only difference would be Vladimir Putin is engaging in kinetic warfare, whereas Donald Trump will engage in economic warfare to take over another nation. That's what it would be. The same thing could be said of China and Taiwan. China wants to invade Taiwan. Xi Jinping has been threatening to take over Taiwan. And you start to understand, what is the difference between all three of these? We will call Vladimir Putin a dictator, Xi Jinping a dictator. What's the difference between Donald Trump? If we're being objective, he's talking about he's talking about owning the Gaza Strip, even taking over Greenland and Canada. And we're sitting here like this. Oh. Let's talk about Epstein. I'm just being real. I'm just, again, back to my thesis. We have an open book test. Are we passing the test? Let's just be objectively clear on, we know, you have to know, all this stuff that is being proposed is entirely insane. And the video was insane. And so what do we do about this? For me, like I said, I'm done. I'm, like I said, I voted for him 3 times. I support the Republican Party. But I can't sit here and say, well, yeah, I'm all the way for it. I'm also, I can't do that. I'm jumping ship. I am certainly not becoming a Democrat. That's not happening. But I can't support these type of things in good faith. Not with my convictions, not with my beliefs, and not, for me, and for, at least for me, for common sense wise. It's like, this is just crazy. Um, and so for you, what that means, I don't know. But I know for me, when I think about these type of things, I think I would sound like a hypocrite. I think I will be failing the test if I see the self-deification, this dude trying to take over, or taking over other nations, lands, that it's like, we didn't vote for any of that. And to say, well, I'm gonna go hard on trying to end abortion, speaking out on the homosexual stuff, the transgender stuff, the sexual, the gender reassignment stuff, but then turn a blind eye, like many of my Christian conservative friends, because it's Donald Trump. I can't do that when it comes to what he's doing. I just can't, I can't do that within my conscience. I just can't do it. Hopefully, my prayer is that he repents and turns away from what he's doing. But nevertheless, I believe we as Christians are being tested. What is your allegiance? Is it to Jesus or Donald Trump? I think that's what's going on, from my view. And so, with that being said, consider this video, consider my thoughts, and I'll be talking to you soon. God bless.